Hi everybody, I'm Professor Rad, and today we're going to talk about how we use our calculators to change between decimal and fraction format. So I'm going to be working through each of these four types of calculators. I've got a TI-84 Plus or a TI-83 Plus would work the same way. I've got a Casio FX300 ES Plus, a TI-30X2S, and a TI-36X Pro. So those are the four that I'm going to be working through. And we're going to do these two examples using each of those calculators. So I'm going to start out with the TI-36X Pro. And basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to enter in this problem, and it's going to give me a fraction answer, and then I'll convert that into decimal format. So I'm going to type in my fraction 3/4 divided by 9/5 and hit enter. And it tells me my fraction answer of 5/12. To change this into decimal format, on this calculator, I've got this little format changing button here. So all I have to do is press this button. It's got like this little back and forth arrow and then like this approximately equals to. So if I press that button, it will automatically turn it into the decimal format. Now with decimals, remember we have to be a little bit careful because if it's a repeating decimal, calculator might like to round it at the end, which is what's happening here. So here we have 0.41 and then a whole bunch of sixes with a 7 on the end. The reason that 7 is there is because actually the sixes continue forever, and so the calculator is just rounding at the end of its screen. So this is 0.41 repeating sixes, which we can write with a bar on top, or you could write that as 0.41 and then 666 ... All right, let's look at the decimal problem, and we're essentially going to do the same thing. So we're going to type in the problem, 2.5 minus 2.76, and hit enter. And that's going to tell us a negative 26 hundredths. Then to change it in fraction form, we hit the same button. So we're going to hit the left-right arrow squiggly, and it changes it into fraction format for us. So this is a negative 13/50. And that's it. If you want to keep changing back and forth, have fun doing so. All you gotta do is press that same button. All right, let's take a look at the TI-30X2S and see how it does its calculation and changes. So for this fraction, I'm going to try and get it on screen but out of the light. So for this fraction, or for this calculator, remember our ABC button, we press that in between the numerator and denominator. So I'm going to do 3/4 divided by 9/5, and I'll hit equals. And that tells me the fraction answer of 5/12. Good news is that's the same as what the other calculator told me. Now on this calculator, to convert between fraction and decimal, there's this button here that says PRB, and above that on the calculator shell, we have F_D. So that means it's going to convert between fraction and decimal format back and forth. But since the F_D is on the calculator casing, we have to hit the second button and then PRB to change the format. So I'm going to press second PRB and then hit enter. And here we go. We've got 0.41, a whole bunch of sixes, and then a 7 at the end. Now, the 7 isn't really here. The calculator's putting that 7 there because it's rounding the next digit up because we've got sixes going forever. So this is going to be 0.41. And then we could write out 666 ... Or you could write it as 0.41 and then put a line over the 6. Let's try the decimal technique. So here we've got 2.5 minus 2.76. And that gives us a negative 0.26. Again, the good news is that matches what we got on the other calculator. And I'm going to use the same technique to convert it to fraction form. So FD, fraction to decimal or decimal to fraction. That's why the arrow is going in both directions there. So I'll press second PRB and hit enter. And it tells me negative 13 over 50. And if I needed the decimal format back, I would just hit second PRB, enter again, and it's changing it back to decimal. So you can do this however many times you want until you get bored. So that's how you can use this calculator to change between decimal and fraction format. All right, let's take a look at a Casio calculator. So on this calculator, to enter in the fractions, I'm going to use my fraction button here. So I've got 3/4 divided by 9/5, and then we'll hit equals. And it gives me the fraction answer by default, 5/12. And the good news is that's the same fraction we got on each of the other two calculators, so that's wonderful. Now to change this into decimal format, I'm going to use this button here that has SD. So I think the S stands for specific and the D for decimal. So we've got the specific answer, which is the fraction format. It's not rounded. And then we're going to change it into decimal format. So I just press that button and it automatically is going to rewrite it. So 0.416 with a line over it. And this calculator automatically puts that line over the 6, and that means that that 6 is repeating. So I could also write this as 0.41666 ... So the 6 is the only digit that's repeating because that's the only digit they put the line over. If I hit this button again, now it's going to expand that decimal so that it puts the 7 on the end, because what it's doing is it's rounding all those 6s. And if I press it again, now it's back in fraction form. So you can just keep hitting that S to D button to convert the format to whatever you need it to be. So the 5/12 is nice if they want a fraction answer. The 0.416 with a line over it is nice if they want an exact answer. And this expanded format is nice if you are asked to round your answer. So it kind of puts a bunch of digits out to make rounding easier. Let's go ahead and try part B. So we have 2.5. And then we're going to subtract 2.76. Now this calculator is defaulting to the fraction format, negative 13 over 50. And if I press that SD button, it'll tell me the decimal answer. And that matches up with what our other calculators were giving as well. All right, we've got one more calculator that I wanted to show because it's got kind of a different setup to it. So this is a TI-84 Plus CE. The CE just means it's in color instead of black and white. And our technique for this one will be the same as for just plain old TI-84 Plus or for a TI-83 or TI-83 Plus. So this calculator, if I go to enter in fractions, it depends on how old your calculator is. It may or may not go into fraction format. So for example, on here, I see that there's this like box over box situation happening. So because that's in the green, if I press alpha and then that button, it's going to set up the boxes for me. Some of the older calculators don't have this feature. So if your calculator is a little bit older and you want to enter a fraction on this calculator, I would just enter it in between parentheses. So I'm going to show you the older way first, and then I'll show you using that specific feature here, how I would enter this problem. So using the older way, I would put a parentheses and do 3 divided by 4 and close those parentheses for 3/4. Then I would do divided by, and then in parentheses 9 divided by 5 and close those up. And when I hit enter, it's going to give me the decimal format first. So I'm going to write down 0.41, and then this one has a bunch of repeating 6s, and it puts this 7 at the end because it's rounding. It ran out of screen, and so the next digit would have been a 6, so it rounds that last one up to a 7. So I can write this as 0.41666 ... to indicate that I have repeating 6s, or write that as 0.416 and put a line over the 6 to indicate the 6 repeats. So you can kind of see from my work above that this is what we found on the other calculators we tried as well. To change this into fraction format, I'm going to make use of the math button. So I'm going to go to math, and it brings me a bunch of options. The first option has a little arrow to frac, and that means it's going to take the answer I just picked and change it into a fraction. So because the one is highlighted, I can just press my enter key down here at the bottom. I'm just going to press enter. And when I press enter, it says make my answer a fraction, which is what we want. So I'll press enter again, and now it tells me the fraction 5/12. So there we go. This calculator prioritized decimal first because of how we had to enter it, and it'll change into the fraction by going to that math menu. This works both on the newer calculators as well as the older models, and there's no shame in having an older model. It works perfectly well for what we need it to do, so don't worry, we were able to make it work. But if you do have this one that has the fraction feature, I'm going to redo this problem, and it'll probably, I'm going to guess, give me my fraction answer first. So again, I'm going to press the alpha button and then this x tau theta n button, and I'm going to put 3 on top and 4 on the bottom. Then we'll divide by 9/5. And when I hit enter, it gives me my fraction answer. So if I wanted to change this fraction answer into a decimal format, I can go back to the math menu, and notice that option 2 says DEC for decimal. So you can select that option either by scrolling down to highlight the 2, or you could just press the number 2 and it'll select that option from the menu. So it doesn't matter here because we don't have far to go. So I'm going to scroll to select and then press enter. I'll press enter again, and there we go. Now it's giving me the decimal format. So we could write that as 0.416 with a bar over it, or 0.41666 ... Okay, so let's go ahead and work through part B. So part B is given to us in decimal format. So I'm going to just type in 2.5 minus 2.76. And because I'm entering it in decimals, it's going to give me the decimal answer first. So we get negative 0.26, which if we compare to our answers from the other calculators is the same. Yes. To make this a fraction, we'll do what we just did in the last problem. We'll go to the math menu. We're going to select the first option, frac, for fraction. Press enter again, and it gives us the fraction answer of a negative 13/50. And if you wanted to go back to decimal format, you can go to math, select option 2 and press enter, enter again, and it'll give you the decimal. So you can keep going to the math option and selecting however often you want to, and continue to change the format until you get bored of doing that. All right, so those are 4 examples of calculators on how you can convert between fraction and decimal answers, regardless of whether you enter fractions or decimals. You can go back and forth on those calculators. So for this Now You Try exercise, we've got 2 more problems for you to try out on your calculator and give your answer in both decimal and fraction format. In our next set of videos, we're going to be converting not between fractions and decimals, but between fractions and mixed numbers. So looking forward to seeing you then. In the meantime, have an excellent day. Bye, everybody.